by the time it was done cooking. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties happen, especially with the first episode. We also have filmed already and are working on our second episode, which is my French bread pizza. I make mine on an Italian loaf, so that'll be the second recipe that we put up. In the description will be all of the details, what ingredients you need and how to put it all together. And we hope you enjoy it. So here comes slow cooker Mongolian beef. And welcome to the first episode of Bougie Comfort Food. My name is Mary Landry and I'd like to welcome you to our new food vlog. We're going to attempt to show you some new things, maybe show you some old things, maybe show you some family favorites that you don't remember or your grandmother used to make. My grandmother's name was Aggie and I loved her to pieces. And I just want to help those who might be looking for new food ideas or might be looking to learn how to cook. This program is going to be at a novice level, so even a 12-year-old could cook. So, let's get started. Today's episode is going to be home-cooked Mongolian beef. And it's done in a slow cooker in a crock pot, so that's super, super easy. You throw everything in, once you get it all put together, throw it in. 3 hours later after it's on high, it's all ready to go. So the first step is we need chopped green onions. Now I've pre-chopped some, but we are going to show people how to chop a green onion. You're going to want them in about 1/4-inch pieces. They don't have to be perfect because nothing in a kitchen is perfect unless you're on Gordon Ramsay's kitchen. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do after we've washed our green onions is we're going to take the bottom, the stem, and cut that off because that's not something that we want to eat. And I always take the tips off and make them even because the tips are usually a little ragged where they've come out of the ground or somebody snipped them ahead of time, so they're drier. Now, if your outside of your onion has a piece that you need to pull away because it's just looks kind of brown or torn, go ahead and pull it away. So, we're going to slice into it. I am not a school-trained chef. I am actually just a home cook. I have been cooking since I was 8 years old and made some recipes on my own, found a few and adapted them to something that tastes better and just kept going. Now I will say my grandmother Aggie taught me how to fry chicken. She was a little old country lady from Minden, Louisiana. I'm originally I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and grew up in Covington for the first 7 years, and then moved overseas and came back in and spent some time at my grandmother's and just learned how to cook some really good stuff. So, we've got our chopped onion. It's about a 1/2 cup of chopped onion. And let me grab my crock pot real fast. Now, we're not quite ready for it, but that's okay. We're going to get everything close by and ready to go. Now, because we don't want to cross-contaminate our board, you always want to cut your vegetables first, washed vegetables, and then you want to go to your meats. Cross-contamination is how people get sick from food. So, what I like to use is thinly sliced eye-round steaks. They just seem to work a little better. Now, I've cut some of them ahead of time. But you need 1.5 pounds of flank steak, or what I'm using, which is the center cut eye rounds that are thinly sliced. And you can see they're real thin. Back in the 80s, they sold a product called Steakums, and they remind me a lot of those uncooked. So we're just going to slice those up roughly. They don't have to be perfect. You don't want too large of slices, but, and they will jiggle around on you, so don't worry about that either. Be careful, careful, careful with your knives. If you have any kids watching today, be careful with your knives. You know, only do this with adult supervision. Now, Mongolian beef can have a sweet sauce, or it can have a more salty sauce. I prefer mine a little more salty and savory. So I add my green onions to my mix. And some folks, like I said, don't do that. Now, once you have your flank steaks cut up, now, like I said, this is 1.5 pounds. The next thing you need, now this actually is my grandmother's bowl. Now, what I like to do, just to make things easier so you're not standing there holding a bag, is I fold it halfway down, open it up, and set it down in my bowl. That way it stays open, it's easier. And what we're gonna do is put our flank steak into this bag. And the next thing that you need is a 1/4 cup of cornstarch. You may be thinking, why cornstarch? Well, cornstarch helps thicken up that sauce and make it lovely. Let me grab a knife real quick. And we're gonna, for those of you who don't know about measuring, when you dry measure, you use dry measuring cups and you run a knife across the top of it. That makes sure that you have a complete measure. We're just gonna dump it in with that steak. You can see. And that is 1/4 cup of cornstarch. Now, what you want to do is take that baggie, go ahead and close it up. And if anybody's ever done shake and bake, it's the same idea. We are coating that steak. You just kind of move it around in there with that cornstarch. Get it completely covered. It's kind of like when you fry chicken. You got to cover that chicken up with your flour. So, when you get that moved around and you can see it, let's open up that bag so you can get a better look. You can see that our steak pieces are now covered in the cornstarch. So the next step is to grab our crock pot. Let's clear away our cutting board because we're done with that one. We're going to take our crock pot, set it out. Now, the first things that you want to put in here, 3/4 cup of soy sauce. If you're on a low sodium diet, it's okay to use low sodium soy sauce. We're also going to put 3/4 cup water. Make sure we've got it nice and level. 3/4 cup water. The next thing we're adding, 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Now I prefer extra virgin olive oil. If you spill a little extra, don't panic. It's gonna all be okay. I promise you. So, 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Now, like I said, I like extra virgin because I don't want to taste the olive in mine. But it's okay if you do. That's fine. Next thing we're going to need is a 1/4 teaspoon. Now, remember what I told you about that measure. You can run that across the top of the jar and get it nice and level. 1/4 teaspoon of minced garlic. Now, if you like more garlic in yours, please feel free to put it in there. There's nobody going to get you for putting too much garlic. Now, if you like a sweeter Mongolian barbecue, you can put 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar. I don't like mine as sweet. I like it more savory. So I only put 1/3 of a cup in mine. But the more sugar you add to it, the sweeter your sauce is going to be. Now, let's see. Let's get out a whisk real quick. Usually I have everything put out, but you know how it is. First episode, we're still working through all the kinks. So I like to go ahead and break up my brown sugar because I've packed it into my measuring cup. And as you can see, you know, your sauce is thin. It's supposed to be. The next thing we're going to add to that is a cup of shredded carrots. You can buy these in the produce section already in a Ziploc baggie. You only need a cup of them. And the thing that I like to add to mine is broccoli. Now it's a little bit different. Everybody makes their Mongolian barbecue different. And we're going to go ahead and add our cup of onions. Remember, we have those green onions. Now if you choose to not have it cook into the flavor of your meal, you can just do one single stick of onion and just use it as a garnish. Some people like that instead. I personally like a little more flavor in my stuff. Now, you can get fresh broccoli florets in your produce section. Now when you put them into your measuring cup, because they actually squish down and everything, it's about half of the package. And I like to add broccoli to mine. Carefully take a knife and split those stems. Now the reason I buy broccoli for florets is because I don't want all that stem in my meal. So I like to break up these stems a little bit if they're too big, if the florets are too big, so that it cooks evenly. Remember, we're doing this in a crock pot, so if the more even that you have it, the more evenly it cooks, and it'll actually take exactly the time that it says it will. And as I said, this meal takes about 2 to 3 hours. What you're going to be looking for in that crock pot is for it to be tender. And part of that is making sure it's all uniform. You can see this big old piece. You can take some of them and just break them off. Sometimes you can do that. Sometimes cut them. Whatever makes you comfortable. Now, I will tell you, do not use frozen broccoli in this recipe. It will not turn out right. All you'll end up with is mushy broccoli. You want fresh. So, now our last thing that we're adding in here, and we'll just take our whisk and move stuff around, it's not that picky. Now remember, your broccoli's going to let off a little bit of water, so are your onions. Your carrots will let off very little, but your meat's also going to make juices in here. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of make sure our steak is nice and loose and covered. And like I said, that's 1.5 pounds of beef. Now, I don't know if you can make Mongolian chicken. I haven't ever tried. I'm sure you probably could, although it might be a little bit different process. So, we're going to stir all that goodness around, and you are literally ready to put it on high for 2 to 3 hours. Now, needless to say, I'm not going to sit here and talk for 2 to 3 hours. So we're going to cut the video in just a moment. But I would like to say why we've started this show. I started this food vlog because I was recently, June 14th, had major abdominal surgery and was in the hospital for 2 weeks recovering. And had some wonderful care at Memorial Hermann in Katy, Texas. And some wonderful nurses and PCAs talked to me. And when I went to work with the physical therapist after my surgery, getting out of bed and whatnot, walking around, one of the young men told me that he didn't know how to cook. And he was in his mid-20s, so no shame in that. He still lived at home with mom and daddy. No shame in that either. But he told me he did not know how to cook. And I was talking about all the wonderful things I wanted to cook when I got home. And in talking to him, he asked me if I'd write down some recipes for him. And I did. I left him a whole folder full of recipes over that 2 weeks. And then when some of the nurses came in and PCAs, those are the personal care assistants, came in, they said, "Oh my goodness, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm writing out recipes for the young man," said his name to them. And they were like, "That's so sweet." And they're like, "Well, what kind of recipes are you writing?" And I started telling them the names of the recipes. And they told me that they would really love to learn how to cook that too. Especially things they could put on in a crock pot and cook all day. You know, a pot roast or a cream of potato or cream of garden vegetable soup. So one of them suggested to me starting a food blog to where people could find the recipes. Now, the recipe for our Mongolian beef is going to be in the description below the video, so you'll know what all you need and how to do it. But these wonderful nurses, like I said, one of them suggested starting a food blog to where she could get these recipes. And I thought, well, sometimes seeing it made is helpful too. So I decided to start this channel, and I called it Bougie Comfort Food because I try to serve something a little upscale and still comfort food. So let's get a look inside this crock pot before we put the lid on. As you can see, our sauce is starting to thicken up because of that cornstarch, and we got all that beef and broccoli and carrots. Whew, already smells good. So we're going to put the lid on this. Take it over here to our crock pot. You turn your crock pot on high, and you'll want to check on this one. This is more of a Saturday meal for you folks that work the weekdays. It takes, like I said, 2 to 3 hours. So you'll want to stir it while it's going about once an hour, just to make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom. So we're going to take a break on this, and when we come back, I'm going to show you how to make jasmine rice.